My name is Clarissa, and I'm 35 years old. For 7 years, I saved every penny from my interior design job to create my dream home. Last month, I returned from a 14-hour workday to find my apartment stripped bare, $13,875 worth of furniture gone. My mother had taken everything and given it to my sister Amelia. It wasn't the first time Mom had chosen her over me, but it would definitely be the last. Before I share how I discovered my mother's shocking betrayal, tell me where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by family. I've always been passionate about interior design. Growing up in a small town outside of Boston, I would spend hours rearranging my bedroom furniture and creating mood boards from magazine cutouts. My parents didn't have much money, but I learned early on how to make a space feel special with minimal resources. That creativity eventually led me to pursue a degree in interior design at Massachusetts College of Art and Design. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at Harper and Associates, a boutique design firm in downtown Boston. The pay wasn't great, but the experience was invaluable. I was determined to succeed in a competitive industry while building my dream home, even if it took years. For 7 long years, I lived in a tiny studio apartment with barely enough room for a bed and a small desk. The walls were an uninspiring beige that the landlord wouldn't let me paint. The floor was covered in worn laminate that creaked with every step. But I didn't mind the cramped quarters because I had a plan. Every month, I would set aside a portion of my paycheck for my furniture fund. While my colleagues splurged on fancy restaurants and designer clothes, I packed lunches and shopped at thrift stores. I had a specific vision for my future home, a blend of mid-century modern pieces with custom touches that would reflect my personality. I researched each potential purchase extensively, waiting for sales, and occasionally driving hours to pick up a special find. Each piece in my collection had a story, a memory attached to it that made it irreplaceable. Last year, all my sacrifices finally paid off. I was promoted to senior designer at Harper and Associates with a significant salary increase that allowed me to put a down payment on a two-bedroom apartment in a beautifully restored historic building in Beacon Hill. The apartment featured original hardwood floors, crown molding, and large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light. It was everything I had dreamed of. My relationship with my family, particularly my mother Diane and sister Amelia, had always been complicated. From my earliest memories, there was a clear pattern of favoritism in our household. When I was 8, I received a simple store-bought cake for my birthday, while Amelia's celebration 3 months later featured a custom-made Princess Castle cake and twice as many presents. For Christmas, when I was 12, I received a generic journal while Amelia unwrapped a new laptop for school. When I graduated with honors from college, my mother barely acknowledged my achievement, but threw an extravagant party when Amelia finished community college with average grades. Despite these painful disparities, I tried to maintain a relationship with my family. I limited our interactions to monthly dinners and holiday gatherings, maintaining healthy boundaries while still staying connected. I wanted to believe that as adults we could move past the childhood dynamics and form more balanced relationships. My mother, Diane, was always quick to point out my flaws while praising Amelia's smallest accomplishments. She was a master of the backhanded compliment. "That promotion is impressive, Clarissa. It's nice to see you finally finding some stability." Meanwhile, Amelia could do no wrong in her eyes. My sister had learned to use this dynamic to her advantage, playing the victim when necessary, and manipulating situations to ensure she got what she wanted. When I shared the news of my promotion and new apartment, my mother's response was predictably lukewarm. "Well, I suppose all those hours at work paid off. Just don't become one of those career women who ends up alone." Amelia's reaction was equally telling. "Must be nice to have everything come so easily to you." Nevertheless, I was proud of what I had accomplished. My apartment had become a showcase of my design philosophy and personal journey. Each piece of furniture represented a milestone, a memory, or a moment of joy in my life. The vintage mahogany dining table that cost $2,300 was found at an estate sale in Vermont. I drove 4 hours each way to pick it up carefully, strapping it to the roof of my friend Taylor's SUV. We laughed the entire drive home, nervously checking the rearview mirror at every bump in the road. That table had hosted countless dinner parties and heart-to-heart conversations with friends. My custom leather sofa worth $3,750 was my biggest splurge. I had saved for over a year to purchase it, selecting the perfect shade of cognac leather that would patina beautifully with age. The evening it was delivered, I opened a bottle of champagne and spent the night simply sitting on it, running my hands over the buttery leather and marveling that it was actually mine. The antique writing desk, valued at $1,825, held special significance. It had belonged to my favorite professor who mentored me through college. When she retired and moved abroad, she offered it to me at a fraction of its value, knowing how much I admired it. I wrote all my important correspondence at that desk, feeling her encouraging presence with every letter. Perhaps my most treasured possession was the hand-knotted Persian rug worth $2,400. It was a gift from my first major client who had brought it back from a trip to Iran. The intricate pattern of deep blues and rich burgundies anchored my living room and reminded me of the moment my career truly began. My bedroom featured a complete mid-century modern set bed frame nightstands and dresser that I purchased for $3,600 to celebrate my promotion. The clean lines and warm walnut finish created the perfect sanctuary for rest after long workdays. Each of these pieces represented not just monetary value, but years of hard work, careful planning, and personal meaning. My apartment wasn't just filled with furniture. It was filled with physical manifestations of my journey and dreams. The trouble began 6 months after I moved into my new apartment. Amelia called one evening, her voice strained as she shared that she had lost her job due to company downsizing. I expressed my sympathy and offered to help her update her resume. 2 weeks later, she called again with more bad news. Her boyfriend of 3 years had broken up with her and moved out of their shared apartment. "I don't know how I'm going to make rent next month," she sobbed over the phone. "Everything is falling apart." I suggested she look for a roommate or a more affordable place, but she dismissed both ideas as impossible. The next day, my mother called to inform me that Amelia would be moving back home temporarily, until she gets back on her feet. The following Sunday, during our monthly family dinner at my mother's house, Amelia dominated the conversation with complaints about her empty apartment. "I can't afford to replace any of the furniture James took," she sighed dramatically. "The place looks so sad and empty now. I don't even want to go back there." I tried to offer constructive advice. "There are some great affordable options at IKEA or even secondhand stores. I could help you find pieces that would work with your space and budget." Before Amelia could respond, my mother interjected. "That's easy for you to say, Clarissa. Not everyone can afford to decorate their home the way you did." "I saved for years, Mom," I reminded her gently. "I lived in a tiny studio and sacrificed a lot to afford what I have now." My mother sniffed dismissively. "Well, perhaps it's time to share some of your good fortune with your sister. Family should help family." The comment made me uncomfortable, but I nodded and offered again to help Amelia find affordable pieces. I even suggested I could loan her a few items I had in storage, some basic pieces from my previous apartment that I'd kept as backups. Over the next few weeks, I noticed my mother taking an unusual interest in my apartment. During a casual coffee visit, she asked probing questions about each piece of furniture, where I got it, how much it cost, how difficult it would be to move. "I'm just curious about your design choices," she explained when I asked about her sudden interest. During another visit, I caught her taking photos of my furniture. "I want to show Amelia your style," she said. "Maybe she can find similar pieces at lower prices." Then came the request for a spare key to my apartment. "It's always good to have someone who can check on your place in case of emergency," she insisted. "What if there's a water leak while you're at work or you lock yourself out?" Against my better judgment, I made her a copy. After all, she was my mother, and I wanted to believe her intentions were good despite our complicated relationship. During her next visit, I noticed her making notes on her phone and seemingly measuring rooms with her steps. When I asked what she was doing, she laughed it off. "Just getting ideas for rearranging my own living room," she said. "Your place always looks so put together." A sense of unease began to grow, but I dismissed it as paranoia. That evening, I called my best friend Taylor to express my concerns. "I can't shake the feeling that my mom is up to something." I confessed. She's been acting strange whenever she visits my apartment. Trust your gut, Taylor advised. Your mother doesn't exactly have a history of respecting your boundaries. But what could she possibly be planning? It's not like she's going to steal my furniture. I laughed, the idea seeming absurd even as I said it. 2 days later, my supervisor informed me that a major client wanted to revamp their entire office before an important investor meeting. The timeline was tight. We would need to work through the weekend to complete the project. I need your full attention on this, Clarissa, she said. We're talking 14 hours minimum on Saturday to get everything ready. I agreed to the assignment knowing it could lead to more high-profile projects in the future. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Will you be home this Saturday? Thought I might stop by. I replied that I would be working all day on a big project. Her response was simply, That's too bad. Another time then. The seemingly innocent exchange would soon reveal itself as the prelude to an unimaginable betrayal. Saturday arrived, and I was at the office by 7 in the morning, fueled by strong coffee and professional determination. The project was even more demanding than anticipated. The client made last-minute changes to the design concept, requiring quick thinking and creative problem-solving. By mid-afternoon, my back ached from moving furniture, and my fingers were stained with paint samples. But the space was gradually transforming. My supervisor ordered dinner for the team at 8, and we continued working late into the night. Despite the exhaustion, there was a sense of camaraderie and accomplishment as we put the finishing touches on the space. When we finally finished at 9:30, the client was thrilled with the results, and my supervisor gave me a congratulatory pat on the back. This is why you're one of our best, Clarissa, she said. Great work today. Tired but satisfied, I drove home through the quiet streets of Boston, looking forward to sinking into my comfortable sofa with a glass of wine before bed. I imagined myself wrapped in the soft throw blanket I kept draped over the armrest, my feet resting on the Persian rug, as I decompressed from the long day. When I reached my building, something felt off immediately. The security door that required a key fob to enter was slightly ajar. I frowned, making a mental note to mention it to the building manager in the morning. As I approached my apartment door on the 3rd floor, I noticed that it wasn't fully closed. My heart began to race as I pushed it open cautiously, calling out, "Hello, is anyone here?" The silence that greeted me was deafening. I flipped on the light switch and froze in complete shock. My living room was nearly empty. The leather sofa, coffee table, side tables, and Persian rug all gone. I rushed to the dining area to find my mahogany table and chairs missing as well. In the study, the antique writing desk had vanished. My bedroom was stripped of the entire mid-century modern set. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. Had I been robbed? But there was no sign of forced entry, and strangely, my electronics, television, laptop, and sound system remained untouched. A professional thief would surely have taken those items first. With trembling hands, I searched the apartment for any signs of a break-in. The windows were all locked from the inside. Nothing was broken. It was as if the furniture had simply vanished into thin air. I called 911, my voice shaking as I reported a possible robbery. While waiting for the police, I paced through the empty rooms trying to make sense of what had happened. That's when I spotted it, a small pearl earring on the floor near the front door. I recognized it immediately as my mother's. She had a distinctive pair that she wore almost daily, a gift from my father before he passed away. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Could my mother have taken my furniture? It seemed too outlandish to believe, yet the evidence was literally at my feet. I called her cell phone repeatedly, but each call went straight to voicemail. I then tried calling Amelia with the same result. As I was about to leave a third voicemail for my sister, a text message notification appeared on my screen. It was from Amelia, a selfie of her smiling widely with the caption, "Finally feeling at home again in my newly furnished apartment, had fresh start." In the background of the photo, unmistakably was my cognac leather sofa. Next to it stood my walnut side table, with the distinctive grain pattern I could recognize anywhere. The edge of my Persian rug was visible on the floor. My legs gave out and I sank to the floor, the phone still clutched in my hand. The betrayal was so complete, so brazen, that I couldn't even cry. A strange numbness spread through my body as my brain tried to protect me from the full impact of what had happened. The police arrived 20 minutes later, a male and female officer, who looked around the apartment with professional detachment. I showed them the photo Amelia had sent and explained my suspicion that my mother had used her key to take my furniture and give it to my sister. "Do you have receipts for these items?" the female officer asked. "Any proof of ownership?" I nodded, pulling up digital receipts on my phone and showing them photos I had taken of my apartment for my design portfolio. The male officer sighed, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Reynolds, I'm afraid this is what we call a civil matter. Since your mother had a key and there was no forced entry, this isn't technically a burglary in the legal sense. But she took $13,875 worth of my property without permission," I protested. "How is that not theft? Family disputes over property are complicated," he explained. "You'll need to consult with an attorney about filing a civil suit to recover your belongings or their value." They took my statement and left, promising to document the incident, but offering little hope of police intervention. I stood in the middle of my empty living room, feeling more alone than I ever had before. The space that had once been my sanctuary now felt violated, stripped not just of furniture, but of the security and peace it had provided. The betrayal cut deeper than the material loss. My own mother, the person who should protect and support me, had orchestrated this violation. She had meticulously planned it, waiting for the perfect opportunity when I would be gone for an extended period. The realization that she had been measuring and photographing my furniture not out of admiration, but as preparation for theft, made me physically ill. I curled up on the bare floor using my coat as a makeshift blanket, too emotionally drained to even attempt to find alternative sleeping arrangements for the night. The hardwood floor was cold and unyielding against my body, a physical manifestation of the harsh reality I now faced. I woke up the next morning with a stiff neck and an unwavering sense of purpose. After a quick shower and change of clothes, I got into my car and drove the 30 minutes to my mother's suburban house, rehearsing what I would say during the journey. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but I was determined to confront her directly. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw both my mother's sedan and Amelia's compact car parked outside. Taking a deep breath, I marched to the front door and rang the doorbell, pressing it longer than necessary. My mother opened the door, her expression shifting from welcome to wariness when she saw my face. "Clarissa, I wasn't expecting you today." I pushed past her into the house. "Where is my furniture, Mom?" Amelia appeared from the kitchen, a mug of coffee in her hand. Her eyes widened momentarily before she composed herself. "What are you talking about?" my mother asked, closing the front door. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You took my furniture yesterday while I was at work. I found your earring on my floor, and Amelia was kind enough to send me a photo with my sofa in the background." My mother's demeanor changed instantly from feigned confusion to defensive justification. "Amelia needed it more than you do. She's been sleeping on an air mattress since James left. So you stole from me." My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. "You took things I spent years saving for without even asking." "Don't be so materialistic, Clarissa," my mother scoffed. "They're just things. You can afford to replace them with your fancy job." Amelia stepped forward, adopting the victim role she had perfected over the years. "I've lost everything, Clarissa. My job, my boyfriend, my home is practically empty. You have so much, and you can't even spare a few pieces of furniture for your own sister." "I offered to help you find affordable furniture," I reminded her. "I even offered to loan you some pieces I had in storage. But that wasn't good enough, was it? You had to take my best pieces, the ones with sentimental value, the ones I saved for years to buy." "You should be happy to help your sister," my mother interjected. "Family supports each other in times of need." "Support?" I laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call breaking into my home and stealing $13,000 worth of my property? That's not support. That's theft." "We didn't break in," my mother corrected. "I have a key which you gave me. For emergencies," I clarified. "Not to clear out my apartment when I'm not home." My mother's eyes narrowed. "You've always been so selfish, Clarissa. Even as a child, you never wanted to share with your sister." "Selfish?" The accusation stung despite its familiarity. "I worked 60-hour weeks for 7 years. I lived in a studio apartment with barely enough room to turn around. I clipped coupons and skipped vacations to afford those pieces. How is that selfish? You're making such a big deal out of this, Amelia said, tears welling in her eyes on cue. I'm going through the worst time in my life, and all you care about is your precious furniture. You don't care about me at all. I turned to face my sister directly. This isn't about the furniture, Amelia. This is about respect and boundaries. If you had asked, we could have worked something out. Instead, you and Mom conspired behind my back to take what wasn't yours. My mother stepped between us. I've always had to compensate for your selfishness, Clarissa. Your sister needs help, and if you won't provide it willingly, sometimes decisions have to be made for the greater good of this family. Her words hit me like a physical blow, confirming what I had suspected, but never wanted to believe in her eyes. Amelia's needs would always outweigh mine, even to the point of justifying theft. I want my furniture back, I said firmly. All of it by the end of the week, or I will take legal action. My mother's jaw dropped. You would sue your own family over furniture. Yes, I replied without hesitation. And it's not just furniture. It's my property that I worked hard for that means something to me. Return it, or I'll see you in court. As I turned to leave, my mother called after me, her voice taking on the manipulative tone I knew well. Clarissa, don't be hasty. Let's sit down and talk about this like adults. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that works for everyone. But I was already walking to my car, my resolve strengthening with each step. For the first time in my life, I was setting a firm boundary with my family and refusing to back down. The shock on my mother's face when I threatened legal action told me she never expected me to stand up for myself. She had always counted on my desire to keep the peace, my willingness to be the bigger person. Not this time. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. My supervisor was understanding, especially given my dedication during the weekend project. With the day to myself, I contacted a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. The consultation fee was steep, but I needed professional guidance. Attorney Marcus Wilson listened attentively as I explained my situation, occasionally taking notes. When I finished, he leaned forward. Unfortunately, Ms. Reynolds' family property disputes are often complicated. Since your mother had a key and could claim you had given her permission to access your apartment, it creates some gray area. I never gave her permission to take my furniture. I insisted. I understand. He nodded. The good news is that you have receipts and photographic evidence that the items belong to you. The text message from your sister showing your furniture in her apartment is also helpful evidence. We have a solid case for conversion that's the civil equivalent of theft. He outlined the process. We would send a formal demand letter first, then file a civil suit if necessary. The cost could be substantial, and the process might take months, but he believed we had a good chance of recovering either my property or its monetary value. As I signed the retainer agreement, my hand trembled slightly. I was about to sue my own mother and sister. Despite their actions, taking this step felt momentous and somewhat surreal. That afternoon, I began cataloging everything that had been taken, creating a detailed inventory for my lawyer. As I listed each item, memories flooded back where I found it, how long I saved for it the moment it was delivered. The Persian rug that my first client had gifted me. The writing desk from my professor. The dining table that Taylor and I had precariously transported across state lines. Halfway through the inventory, my chest tightened and my breathing became shallow. The room seemed to spin as the full weight of the violation crashed over me. I recognized the symptoms of a panic attack. I'd had them occasionally in college during finals week. Sliding to the floor, I focused on breathing deeply, counting slowly as I inhaled and exhaled until the tightness in my chest began to ease. That evening, my phone exploded with messages and calls from extended family members. My mother had wasted no time in spreading her version of events. Ungrateful, Clarissa refusing to help her poor sister in need, threatening to sue over a few pieces of furniture. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I rarely spoke with suddenly felt entitled to lecture me about family loyalty and forgiveness. Your mother is heartbroken, said my Uncle Robert, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. You need to drop this lawsuit nonsense and work things out. Amelia has been through so much, insisted my Aunt Patricia. Surely you can spare a few things to help her get back on her feet. Only my father's sister, Aunt Judith, offered a different perspective when she called. "Your mother called me with some story about you being selfish," she began. "But I know there's more to it. Tell me what really happened." I explained the situation, my voice breaking occasionally, as I detailed the extent of the theft and the confrontation that followed. "That sounds like Diane," Aunt Judith sighed. "She's always favored Amelia and expected you to do the same. Your father would be furious if he knew what she'd done. Her validation meant more than I could express. For years, I had questioned my own perceptions, wondering if I was overreacting to my mother's treatment or being too sensitive. "Clarissa, listen to me," Aunt Judith continued. "Your mother has been painting you as the villain since you were a child. Anytime you stood up for yourself or didn't go along with her plans, she would tell everyone how difficult and selfish you were. It's not true, and it never was." The revelation that my mother had been systematically undermining me throughout my life sent me into a tailspin of doubt and self-examination. How many relationships had been affected by her behind-the-scenes character assassination? How many family members had formed opinions of me based on her distorted accounts? The isolation I felt was profound. Apart from Taylor and Aunt Judith, I had no supporters in this conflict. The family I had always tried to maintain connections with, despite the dysfunction, had turned against me almost unanimously. That night I broke down on the phone with Taylor, sobbing, as I confessed my deepest fear. What if they're right? What if I am selfish and materialistic? What if I'm overreacting? "Clarissa, stop," Taylor said firmly. "If I stole $13,000 from you, would you press charges?" "Of course." "Then why should your mother and sister get a pass just because you share DNA? They committed a crime against you. They violated your home and your trust. You have every right to hold them accountable." 3 days later, I received a certified letter from a lawyer representing my mother. It claimed that the furniture items had been gifts from her to me over the years, which she was legally entitled to reclaim. The letter further alleged that I had verbally agreed to loan the items to Amelia during a family dinner discussion. The fabrications were so blatant, they would have been laughable if they weren't so painful. My mother had never gifted me a single piece of the furniture in question. Every item had been purchased with my own hard-earned money, documented with receipts in my name. I forwarded the letter to Attorney Wilson, who assured me it was a desperate attempt to create confusion. "They're hoping you'll get discouraged and drop the matter," he explained. "This actually shows they're worried about your case." With support from Taylor and Aunt Judith, I began to see the manipulation tactics more clearly. The guilt trips, the gaslighting, the distortion of events. These were tools my mother had wielded my entire life to maintain control and ensure her preferred narrative prevailed. For the first time, I was refusing to play my assigned role in the family drama. Instead of backing down or accepting blame, I was holding firm to my boundaries and my truth. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. Recognizing I needed additional support, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Eleanor Park, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Her office was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture that immediately put me at ease. "Tell me what brings you here," she said after we settled in. I hesitated, then plunged in. "My mother stole all my furniture and gave it to my sister while I was at work." If Dr. Park was shocked by this opening statement, she didn't show it. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully and asked me to elaborate. I spent the next 45 minutes detailing not just the theft, but the lifetime of favoritism and manipulation that had preceded it. "What you're describing sounds like a classic narcissistic family dynamic," she explained when I finished. "Your mother positioned Amelia as the golden child, and you as the scapegoat. It's a common pattern in families with narcissistic parents." She went on to explain how this dynamic shapes children's development and continues into adulthood if not addressed. The golden child learns they can do no wrong and develops entitlement, while the scapegoat internalizes blame and often spends a lifetime seeking validation from people incapable of giving it. "The hardest part of healing," she said gently, "is accepting that your mother may never acknowledge the harm she's caused or provide the validation you deserve. Your healing can't depend on her recognition of your worth." Those words struck a chord deep within me. How much of my life had I spent trying to prove my value to someone who was constitutionally incapable of seeing it? Over the following weeks, I worked with Dr. Park to process my grief and anger while setting healthier boundaries. I began to recognize that my worth wasn't dependent on my mother's approval or anyone else's. The strength to stand up for myself didn't come from external validation, but from honoring my own truth. Meanwhile, I continued gathering evidence for my case. I compiled receipts, bank statements, photos from my design portfolio, and testimony from friends who had seen my apartment before the theft. Attorney Wilson filed the civil suit, and my mother and sister were officially served with court papers. The fallout was immediate. My mother left a tearful voicemail accusing me of tearing the family apart. Amelia sent a series of angry texts calling me selfish and vindictive. Extended family members increased their pressure campaign, with one cousin even showing up at my workplace to talk some sense into me. I blocked numbers, limited social media access, and instructed the receptionist at work to screen my visitors. Each boundary I set felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been surrendered to maintain family peace over the years. With the court date still weeks away, I faced the practical challenge of living in an empty apartment. Taylor and other friends rallied around me, offering support both emotional and practical. My colleague Marco, who had connections with furniture staging companies, arranged for me to borrow some basic pieces until my case was resolved. "It's not the same, but at least you won't have to sleep on the floor," he said as we set up a simple bed and sofa in my apartment. The contrast between the conditional support of my biological family and the genuine care shown by my chosen family was stark. Taylor spent weekends helping me reorganize my space. Marco introduced me to his favorite furniture restorer in anticipation of recovering my pieces. My supervisor at work adjusted my schedule to accommodate court preparations. These acts of kindness helped rebuild my faith in relationships. Not everyone would betray or abandon me when I enforced boundaries. Some people respected them and valued me more for having them. As the court date approached, I rehearsed my testimony with Attorney Wilson, preparing for any questions or challenges that might arise. The night before the hearing, I received an unexpected text from Amelia. "Mom doesn't know I'm texting you. I'm sorry about what happened. It wasn't my idea. She showed up with a moving truck and said you wanted to help me furnish my place. I should have called to check. Can we talk before tomorrow?" The message left me conflicted. Part of me wanted to believe Amelia had been manipulated by our mother, just as I had been, albeit in different ways. Another part reminded me of her history of playing both sides and avoiding responsibility. After consulting with my attorney, I replied simply, "I'll hear what you have to say in court tomorrow." The county courthouse was an imposing structure of red brick and white columns. I arrived early, dressed in a conservative navy suit, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. Attorney Wilson met me on the steps, his confidence reassuring as he reviewed our strategy one final time. "Remember, stick to the facts," he advised. "Don't let emotions or family history distract from the central issue: they took your property without permission." Inside the courtroom, I spotted my mother and sister sitting with their attorney, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses. My mother wore a somber gray dress that made her look fragile and grandmotherly, a deliberate choice I suspected. Amelia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, another calculated performance. The case was called, and Judge Harriet Mendoza, a woman in her 60s with keen eyes and an authoritative presence, instructed both parties to present their evidence. Attorney Wilson methodically laid out our case, my receipts for each piece of furniture, photographs of the items in my apartment before the theft, my sister's incriminating text with my furniture visible in the background, testimony from the police officers who had responded to my call. My mother's attorney argued that the furniture had been family property all along, purchased with the understanding that it would be shared as needed. He painted me as a materialistic daughter, unwilling to help her struggling sister during a difficult time. When it was my turn to testify, I felt a surprising calm. After weeks of therapy and preparation, I knew my truth and was ready to speak it. "Ms. Reynolds," Judge Mendoza asked, "did you at any point give permission for your mother or sister to remove these items from your apartment?" "No, Your Honor, I did not," I stated firmly. I offered to help my sister find affordable furniture or loan her some pieces I had in storage, but I never consented to them taking the items listed in my complaint. "And how did you acquire these items?" I purchased them myself over several years with money I earned working as an interior designer. I have provided all receipts and bank statements confirming these purchases. When cross-examined by my mother's attorney, I maintained my composure even as he tried to characterize me as unfeeling toward my sister's plight. Isn't it true that family members often share possessions, Ms. Reynolds, that we make sacrifices for those we love? Yes, when asked and when freely given, I responded. Not when taken without permission in a planned theft. My mother testified next, weaving a narrative of a selfish daughter who had always refused to share and a desperate attempt to help her younger daughter in crisis. But her story began to unravel under Attorney Wilson's cross-examination. Mrs. Reynolds, can you provide any evidence that you purchased these items for your daughter? We're family. We don't keep receipts for everything, she replied evasively. Yet your daughter has provided receipts for everything in her name paid from her accounts. Can you explain that? My mother's composure slipped. She's always been materialistic, always wanting the best things, never thinking about others. I raised her better than that. The judge intervened. Please answer the question directly, Mrs. Reynolds. As the questioning continued, my mother's version of events became increasingly contradictory. She claimed I had verbally agreed to the furniture transfer, then admitted she had deliberately chosen a day when I would be absent. She insisted the furniture had been loans, but couldn't explain why she hadn't asked permission or left any note. Amelia's testimony was equally problematic. Under oath, she admitted she had suspected the furniture might have been taken without my knowledge, but had chosen not to question it or contact me. After both sides presented their cases, Judge Mendoza took only a brief recess before delivering her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I find in favor of the plaintiff Clarissa Reynolds, she declared. The defendants Diane and Amelia Reynolds are ordered to return all items listed in the complaint to the plaintiff within 7 days. If any items cannot be returned in their original condition, the defendants must pay the plaintiff the full replacement value. Additionally, the defendants are responsible for all reasonable moving costs associated with returning the property. The validation of having an objective third party confirm what I knew to be true was overwhelming. My mother's face flushed with anger, while Amelia looked down at her hands. As we left the courtroom, I overheard my mother hissing to her attorney about appealing the decision, but her protest sounded hollow even to my ears. Outside on the courthouse steps, Taylor waited with a bouquet of yellow daisies, my favorite flowers. "Congratulations on standing up for yourself," she said, embracing me tightly. "I'm so proud of you." The victory was bittersweet. I had won my case and would recover my property, but the cost was the illusion of family that I had clung to for so long. My mother and sister had shown me exactly who they were, and now I had to decide what kind of relationship, if any, I could have with them moving forward. 7 days later, a moving company delivered my furniture back to my apartment. As I had feared, several pieces showed signs of careless use. The leather sofa had a wine stain on one cushion. The writing desk had a deep scratch across its surface. The Persian rug had what looked like nail polish spilled on one corner. Seeing my once pristine possessions returned in such condition brought a fresh wave of anger, but also a sense of closure. These physical damages were tangible reminders of the emotional damage my family had inflicted over the years, visible proof that I hadn't imagined or exaggerated the harm. I hired Marco's recommended furniture restorer, who was able to address most of the damage. Some pieces, like the Persian rug, would never be quite the same, but there was something poetic about that too. Like me, these objects had been through something traumatic and emerged changed, but not destroyed. As I gradually restored my apartment, I made conscious decisions about each piece. Some I kept finding renewed appreciation for their beauty and the journey they represented. Others I chose to sell using the money to purchase new items without painful associations. The process became a metaphor for my own healing, keeping what still served me, releasing what didn't, and creating space for new beginnings. My boundaries with my mother and sister remained firm. I declined their initial attempts at reconciliation, which came with no real acknowledgement of wrongdoing or promises of changed behavior. When my mother called to invite me to Thanksgiving dinner as if nothing had happened, I politely declined. "I'm not ready for that," I told her. "I need time and space to heal from what happened." You can't hold a grudge forever, Clarissa, she replied, the familiar manipulative tone creeping into her voice. We're still family. Being family doesn't give anyone the right to violate my boundaries or take my possessions, I responded calmly. When you're ready to acknowledge what you did and take steps to repair the trust you broke, we can discuss moving forward. Instead of traditional holiday gatherings that had always left me feeling diminished, I created new traditions with friends. Taylor hosted a chosen family Thanksgiving, where everyone contributed their favorite dish and shared stories of gratitude. For Christmas, a group of us volunteered at a local shelter before exchanging small, thoughtful gifts at Marco's apartment. My work with Dr. Park continued focusing on processing my grief for the family relationships I had wanted, but never truly had. I learned to recognize and honor my emotions without being controlled by them, to set boundaries without guilt, and to value myself independently of others' opinions. My design career flourished as I channeled my energy into creative projects rather than family drama. 6 months after the court case, I was offered a partnership at Harper and Associates in recognition of my contributions to the firm. The financial security and professional validation reinforced what I had been learning in therapy. I was capable, valuable, and worthy of respect. On the 1-year anniversary of what I now called the Great Furniture Heist, I hosted a small gathering in my fully restored apartment. Looking around at the friends who had supported me through the darkest period of my life, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and peace. My journey had taught me that sometimes the most painful losses open the door to the most significant growth. By standing up for myself and refusing to accept mistreatment, I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. The furniture that had been taken and returned now symbolized not just material possessions, but my reclamation of personal power. Most importantly, I had built a home within myself that no one could take away, a foundation of self-respect, healthy boundaries, and authentic relationships. As I raised my glass in a toast to my chosen family, I knew with certainty that the life I had created from the ashes of betrayal was richer, more genuine, and more fulfilling than anything I had known before. Sometimes the family we choose proves more valuable than the one we're born into, and the homes we build in our hearts more lasting than any physical structure. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who cross the line? Share your experience in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and hit the notification bell to hear more stories of resilience and self-discovery. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, your worth is never determined by those who fail to see it.